A cute cat, beautiful flowers, a beautiful princess. Mandy and I filled the blank notebook with all kinds of drawings. I'm such a clumsy, ugly, and slow girl. It's no surprise if my parents abandoned me, she mumbled emotionlessly, hoping that she would learn to love herself someday. I kept on drawing, filling the page while sitting next to her. There was a wonderful story waiting for a child unloved by her real parents. My name is Nicole. I'm 36 years old, working in administration at a small company. I married my husband Scott, who was 2 years older than me, 5 years ago. Although Scott is a man of few words, he is kind and a husband I am proud of, trusted by those around us. Even we, a loving couple, had our worries. They are my sister and her husband. Listen up, Jake got through another audition for a kid's model again. My sister started, as she usually does, bragging about her son. When we went back home for the summer holidays, my sister's family had already arrived. As expected, she started boasting about her son immediately. It's getting busy again. It's so tough. Well, it can't be helped. Jake is like a prince out of a storybook, handsome, smart, and excellent in sports. My father at home replied to my sister's remarks. Jake seemed very proud too. Jake, who had just turned 5, has a face and tall figure that anyone would say is good-looking. Considering that he's smart and good at sports, I can understand why they want to brag about him. It does get a bit tiresome hearing them boast about their son every time we meet, but I guess that's just how it is. My sister patted Jake's head and quickly glanced at the corner of the room. There was her other child sitting on the carpet drawing. Mandy, who is 7 years old. Even though Jake is so excellent, it's really troublesome that she is so slow. That's true. My sister's husband also laughed, agreeing with my sister's inappropriate comment. Feeling sorry for Mandy, who continued drawing without changing her expression amidst such treatment from her parents, I couldn't help but intervene. Why don't you guys teach her or maybe enroll her in a gymnastics class? No way. It's a waste of time and money on such a slow child. My usually silent husband, who had been quietly sipping his tea, perhaps feeling sorry for Mandy, moved closer to her to peek at her drawing. Mandy, is that a princess you're drawing? You're really good at this. You can tell. You've never raised a child. Any 7-year-old can draw that, my sister replied. Sis, I exclaimed, glaring at her. She snorted in response. What's the point of drawing pictures? They won't earn you money in the future. It's a world of difference compared to Jake, who's already making money as a model, saying that my sister started lovingly stroking Jake's head again. My heart ached when I thought about how Mandy must feel watching this emotionlessly. Every time we meet my sister and her husband, we are subjected to this sight. My sister and her husband dote on Jake, who is capable and cute, and boast about him everywhere. On the other hand, Mandy is subjected to their harsh words because they see her as incapable. The difference in the time, effort, and money they spend on them is as clear as day and night. From my perspective, Mandy is also cute, and whenever we visit, she kindly helps Grandma. She's a gentle and wonderful child. However, it seems like my sister and her husband are completely blind to Mandy's charms. My husband and I only step in when things go too far, but my sister and her husband jestingly say, "Well, we could give our daughter to you. You're struggling to have your own kids, aren't you?" In such a targeted way, my sister knows how to throw words that hurt me the most. Yes, my husband and I don't have any children. We've wanted children and have been undergoing infertility treatments since we got married. However, no matter how advanced the treatments we tried, I never became pregnant. Eventually, we reached our physical, emotional, and financial limits and stopped treatment before our relationship became strained. That's probably why I'm so concerned about Mandy, who is neglected by my sister and my brother-in-law. If my sister doesn't want her, I thought many times about actually taking her in. My husband too finds Mandy's situation pitiful and has offered to adopt her if that's what I want. However, it's also important whether Mandy herself wants to be raised by us. My mother has also worried about Mandy and thought about adopting her a few times. But since her only income is her pension, it would be hard for her to support Mandy through high school, and she was conflicted about whether it was right to take a child away from her parents. One day while I was wrestling with these thoughts, my sister and her husband crossed a line. One chilly autumn evening when I came home from work, Mandy was standing at the door of our apartment. "Mandy, what's going on? Where's your mom? I'm sorry." Mandy was hugging her backpack tightly and looking down. I couldn't quite comprehend the situation, but I was worried she would catch a cold, so I invited her in while holding her trembling shoulders. Once I had given her some warm hot chocolate, Mandy began to open up little by little. Apparently, her brother Jake had a modeling job in New York over the weekend, and my sister and her husband had gone with him. But they said it would be a waste of money for travel expenses and homework to take Mandy, so they left her at my place without telling me. That's awful. Unable to contain my anger, I cursed at my sister's utter lack of maternal instincts. "It's because I'm ugly and useless." Mandy looked down as she said this. "That's not true, Mandy. You're a sweet and lovely girl." Even as I tried to comfort her, Mandy just shook her head. Seeing my small niece so dejected and denying her own worth made me want to cry. When my husband came home, he was, of course, furious with my sister and her husband. Despite our attempts to reach my sister by phone and email, she responded unilaterally. "I'll pick her up on Sunday," and then hung up. I can't understand how someone can treat their own child, who they brought into the world, so shabbily. Despite waiting for me to come home from work since the afternoon, standing in front of our apartment all by herself. Despite how cold and scared she must have been in her small body. Despite waiting patiently without crying. "Mandy, let's play with Uncle." "We'll play a lot." My husband, his hands shaking with rage, forced a smile and spoke to Mandy. I decided I was going to do anything and everything that would make Mandy happy. That being said, Mandy, who had lived a life oppressed by my sister and her husband, seemed hesitant to accept our offers. She carefully spread the notebook she brought in her little backpack on the desk and spent hours drawing. So we decided to draw pictures with Mandy, spreading our notebooks next to hers. Then Mandy started glancing at my drawings. "What's that?" "Huh? It's a cat." "What?" Mandy's eyes widened. My husband burst out laughing when he saw my drawing. "Hey, a cat? Not a monster. A monster. It's a cat, a genuine cat." Protesting to my two rude husbands, Mandy gave a small chuckle. Involuntarily, my husband and I exchanged glances. "See, even Mandy is laughing at you. Mandy draws a real cat." "What, Mandy? This is a cat, right? It looks like a cat, doesn't it?" Mandy couldn't stop laughing. Maybe she found our interaction with our cat hilarious. Mandy's smile, which we saw for the first time, was so cute that both my husband and I were hooked and started laughing as well. After that, we drew a lot of pictures together. Mandy seemed to find my drawings hilarious and laughed at whatever I drew. I was drawing quite seriously, though. Through the drawings, Mandy gradually opened up to us and told us about her favorite foods and her dream of becoming a comic book artist. "That's a wonderful dream," I told her, and Mandy shyly smiled. Then late on Sunday night, my sister appeared grinning from ear to ear. Seeing my sister, Mandy's face turned expressionless again. "Wow, even though Jake is only 5 years old, he's doing great as a model, and even the photographers have been praising him. He might make his debut in showbiz soon. Come on, Mandy, time to go. Without even looking at Mandy, my sister harshly pulled her by her thin arm. Is this how she treats the daughter she left behind? Unbelievable, truly unbelievable. Angered, I grabbed my sister's arm and took Mandy back. Huh? What? Apologize. Huh? Apologize to Mandy. At my words, my sister shook her head as if she was flabbergasted. Oh, are you sympathizing with Mandy again? It can't be helped, you know. It's tough when you have 2 kids. Well, you wouldn't understand, seeing as you don't have any. Even without kids, I can see that you're the worst parent in history. Huh. Perhaps she was very pissed off at being talked back to. My sister's face turned red, her eyes wide open, and she began ranting and raving, spitting all over. You're such a failure, can't even have kids. That's right, I'll give Mandy to you. She's too much trouble for us. Maybe 2 failures can get along well, eh? Her vulgar laughter echoed throughout the house. Mandy was looking down, tightly holding her skirt. Seeing that, my anger that had been accumulating for the past 3 days exploded. I had thought that I shouldn't separate a parent and child. I thought that there might be a bond of love that I, who don't have children, can't understand. But I was wrong. I should have separated them sooner. This woman is not a mother, not even a human being. Even if Mandy forgives her, I will not. I looked up at my husband, who was standing next to me. As if he felt the same way as me, he gave me a big nod. So I smiled at my sister. Thank you. Huh? You're giving us Mandy, right? We will gratefully accept her. Huh? My sister was dumbfounded, her mouth agape. Of course, Mandy also looked up at us with her eyes wide open. We'll come to pick up Mandy's belongings tomorrow. Please let your husband and Jake know as well. Eh? Wait. I threw my stunned sister out of the entrance and locked the door with a click. I sat down to match the confused Mandy's gaze and spoke to her gently. Mandy, would you like to live with your aunt and uncle? Huh? You see, dear, your aunt loves you very much and wants to spend every day drawing pictures with you. Mandy hugged her backpack, which contained a cherished notebook, tightly. Can I draw every day? You won't get angry. No, we won't get angry. Let's draw a lot together. I gently stroked Mandy's small head. Mandy looked down and thought for a while before giving a small nod. After that, my husband and I actually took Mandy in. It seemed like my brother and his wife didn't think we would genuinely want to take Mandy. They probed us with suspicious eyes, as if they thought we had some ulterior motive. But when they realized we were serious, they were relieved and quickly let go of Mandy. They seemed to only care about their son Jake. It's extremely distasteful, but right now, prioritizing Mandy's protection is more important than starting a fight, so we kept quiet. And so my husband and I consulted with the appropriate agencies and made it possible to act as her guardians. In the beginning, Mandy, who was anxiously tucked away in the corner of the room, would timidly approach us when we invited her to draw together. She then laughed at the earnest drawings my husband and I made together, and so little by little, we became close and formed a family. Fast forward 20 years. Mandy, now 27, has fulfilled her dream of becoming a comic book artist, even having her work turned into animations and becoming a bit of a celebrity. Mandy moved out of our home to rent an apartment as a workspace in residence, but when she's not too busy with work, she often drops by for dinner. That's because Auntie's food is delicious. Every time I see Mandy happily munching on my food and saying those words, my face beams with joy. Knowing Mandy's expressionless and emotionless days from 20 years ago Seeing her happy now is especially gratifying. However, my sister, having heard somewhere about Mandy's success, decided to show up at our house on a day when Mandy happened to be visiting. "Mandy, I heard you've become a comic artist and are making good money." "That's my girl, Mom." Looking at her mother, whose eyes were sparkling and who was acting overly flirty, Mandy's face turned stoic. "I knew you had the talent. After all, you were so good at drawing when you were little." "What nerve do you have to say that?" My words, spat out in disgust, were ignored by my sister. "So, Mandy, I have a request. Our town is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year, right? I'm part of the town hall staff involved in planning the anniversary event. I'd love for you to give a lecture. As a comic book artist, you're a role model for the kids, so they'd be thrilled. How about it? Consider it as a way to honor your parents. Will you do it?" This woman has some nerve. After ignoring Mandy all these years next to me, holding back my anger with a red face, Mandy murmured, "What about Jake?" "Huh? Why not ask your beloved Jake, Mom? I think that would be a better idea." At Mandy's question, her older sister clearly grimaced. In truth, both Mandy and I knew the darling Jake, the pride and joy of my sister, had disappeared right after graduating from college. Even as my sister and her husband searched for him frantically, they couldn't find any clue of his whereabouts. In other words, they were abandoned by their precious Jake. I couldn't care less about that ungrateful boy. I have you, my dear daughter. Nothing but a voice of disbelief could escape past the point of anger. To such a mother, Mandy gave an unexpected reply. "I'll do it, Mandy." "Way to go, Mandy. The best thing to have is indeed a daughter." My sister seemed to be in such high spirits that I wondered if she might start dancing. Is Mandy really planning to take it on? As if to reassure me, who was watching her anxiously, Mandy gave a small nod. On the day of the lecture, Mandy wanted us to be there, so my husband and I quietly took seats in the back of the auditorium. Of course, my sister and her husband were at the very front of the hall, proudly boasting about their daughter to those around them. In front of the full house, Mandy confidently began her speech. I couldn't help but tear up at the sight of Mandy's lively demeanor. And towards the end of the supporting meeting, I would like to introduce some people to you all. My family who raised me with love. With that announcement, Mandy descended into the audience. "Mandy?" My sister and her husband stood up as if moved, ready to greet Mandy. However, Mandy completely ignored them and walked past. She came all the way to where we were seated in the back. "This is Uncle Scott and Aunt Nickel, who took me in after my mother abandoned me, Mandy." Mandy looked at us and gave us a warm smile. "That's a good one, just like a cartoonist. What a funny joke." Yes, that's right. Look, Mandy, your beloved Mom and Dad are over here." With their faces distorted, my sister and her husband were desperately calling out to Mandy, but Mandy ignored them splendidly. My parents provided me with food and a place to live, but that was all. When I came in last in a race, they would call me a slowpoke, and when I caught a cold, they treated me like something dirty, saying, "Don't pass it on to us." The hall fell silent at Mandy's revelation, and the voices of my sister and her husband saying, "Ha," and "No, that's not true," echoed in panic. Ever since I was in kindergarten, they always criticized my drawings as dirty, crappy, and useless, and sometimes they even tore them up in front of me. Mandy's calm confession continued. Each time my sister and her husband denied it, but as the people in the hall looked at them with disdain, their faces became paler and paler, leaving such parents alone. Mandy faced us, the people who took me in, a child not loved by her parents. Uncle Scott and Aunt Nickel praised my drawings a lot. They bought me many notebooks and pencils and drew a lot with me. On my birthdays, they prepared my favorite meals and cakes, and when I had fights with my friends, they worried with me about how to make up. Even without receiving any child support from my parents, they supported me to go to a specialized school so I could turn my love of drawing into a career. Therefore, I am here today thanks to Uncle Scott and Aunt Nicole. We haven't done anything special. We just cared for Mandy as if she were our own daughter. Yeah, for you folks, cherishing a child is a given, but there are parents who even abandon their own flesh and blood. I respect and love my aunt and uncle who cared for me so deeply from the bottom of my heart. At Mandy's words, my vision blurred with tears. My heart swells with warmth. There were times when I worried about whether we could make Mandy happy after adopting her, whether it was right to separate her from her real parents. But Mandy standing in front of us is proof. We were able to become a real family. Thank you for raising me. Thank you for supporting my dreams. Because you two loved me so much, I've learned to love myself. I'm so happy to be part of your family, Mandy. Unable to hold back, I pull Mandy into a hug, and her slender hand gently strokes my back. My husband looks up, trying to hold back his tears. The entire venue is enveloped in tears and applause, echoing our sentiment. In the midst of this, my sister and her husband sneak out of the venue. Naturally, their reputation takes a huge hit afterwards. The news spreads quickly throughout our small town, and apparently my sister quit her job out of fear of being seen and has been cooped up at home all day. My sister's husband, who used to be an active member of the PTA and bragged about his parenting skills on his blog, was humiliated. His son, who he had bragged about so much, was nowhere to be found. His daughter, who had established herself as a comic artist, exposed his misdeeds, which were then spread by her fans' blog. The blog was heavily criticized, and he was scorned both at work and in the community. Because my sister quit her job first, her husband couldn't quit his job either. Under the stress, my sister doesn't do anything, just stays at home all day, and they seem to be having loud arguments late into the night to the point where neighbors have had to call the police multiple times. Well, when their daughter disappeared, the neighbors had already noticed that something was wrong with that family. Meanwhile, their son Jake, who has gone missing, is actually traveling the world as a backpacker. Jake, who was the recipient of all his parents' love and expectations, was subjected to their interference in every aspect of his life, including his career choices and friendships, and had a stifling childhood. Naturally, whenever he had a girlfriend, they would immediately interfere, so he was fed up. Then he met an older female backpacker, and he left the country with just a backpack to follow her. The reason I know this is because Jake would occasionally visit her house since high school to interact with his sister Mandy. He had been worried about Mandy, who had been kicked out because of him, and he said that both Mandy and Jake were victims of their parents. Although his parents think he's missing, in reality, whenever Jake returns home, he visits our house and leaves gifts and stories from his travels. Every time I see the two of them happily chatting, I vow to never tell their parents. At the beginning of the month, I bought a magazine featuring Mandy's comic. Sometimes in Mandy's comics, the protagonist's clothing has patterns that are illustrations of our cat, which Mandy and my husband call a monster. I tell her to stop because it's embarrassing, but Mandy just laughs and says it's a drawing by the artist I respect most in the world. Well, I can't help but laugh and say if the cutest daughter in the world says so, I guess it can't be helped.